And okay, before I introduce our featured speaker, there are just a few comments that I want to make. First of all, I want to recognize board member Marsha Willard, who came all the way from Rio Vista to be with us today. We were very sad to lose her, but Rio Vista got a little prize, this I know. I also want to recognize and acknowledge the contributions of Kathy Freeborn. And Kathy Freeborn, you all know, she's our longest member, I understand, so congratulations. She also contributed the live plants that you see at the tables, and we're donating those plants to Barbara Flynn's Hawthorne Tree Project, and she's going to see what they get out of the community for a live plants. And then I talked in my opening remarks about leadership and the importance of that, and I want to recognize a leader in our club, and that is Sandra Millers, who is my past president and a tremendous contributor. And on a personal note, you know, whenever you take over the leadership of a club that you're fairly new to, as I am to Soroptimist, you need help. You really do. And it's okay to say you need help. And I did, and I do, and Sal is always there to help. And Sal is also, as past president and director, on our board. So, with that, I have finished my remarks, and I'm now going to give our featured speaker a proper introduction. And I'm one of these people that I take notes, but then I don't look at them. This time I'm going to look at it because it's very important that you know the character of Sandra Millers Younger.
Olga, hold
Yes.
it real close.
Arvina?
We can't hear you, honey.
Okay,
Hold it
somebody
closer.
tell me when you can or can't.
Closer.
Can you hear me? Closer?
There.
Is that it? All right. Okay. Thank you. See, help from a leader. All right. Sandra Millers Younger lost her home, 12 neighbors, and nearly her own life in the Cedar fire. The biggest known wildfire in California history that ravaged San Diego County, burning 280,000 acres, destroying more than 2,200 homes, and killing 15 people. I said earlier to someone, there's a reason the media is not here. There's news happening outside. That is the weather. As a magazine journalist, Sandra felt compelled to tell the Cedar fire story, a 10-year effort that culminated in her 2013 book, The Fire Outside My Window. A survivor tells the true story of California's epic Cedar fire. Acclaimed as required reading for residents of wildfire country, Sandra's book has been featured by NBC's Dateline and adopted as a training text for top-level emergency response managers and incident commanders. Today, as an inspirational speaker and the founder of Comeback Solutions International, Sandra works with disaster survivors and top-level emergency response leaders to promote resilience, the quality that transforms disasters, loss, and trauma into growth, opportunity, and global impact. She's shared her disaster survival recommendations with radio and television audiences nationwide and appeared with her husband, Bob, in the March 2015 NBC Dateline special, Escape, the Great California Fire, telling their story of survival against all odds. Today, Sandra and her family live in Wildcat Canyon, where they rebuilt their home and reclaimed their lives after the Cedar fire. There are many corollaries between the Cedar fire and the Valley fire. One of the reasons we decided to invite Sandra to be our featured speaker. Also, as a fire survivor, we knew Sandra could identify with our situation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome our featured speaker, Sandra Millers Younger.
Turned into a tiny flame that became a catastrophe. A full-blown catastrophe that drew a line down the middle of your lives, dividing everything into two categories, before and after the fire. 6 months ago today, my husband Bob and I were watching the news from San Diego, and we were keeping close touch with our good friends here in Lake County. And our hearts were breaking for you. And I said to him, don't you wish we could go up there and just hug a few people? Don't you wish we could tell them, you're gonna get through this, you can come back. So today, I get to do that. If I haven't hugged you yet, don't leave without it. So let's just take a moment right now to settle in and appreciate this opportunity that we have. Let's just take a deep breath and be grateful for this normal day. To think just 6 months ago, you could hardly imagine a normal day. And yet here you are. You've come so far, so fast. However long the journey stretches from here, and it is a long journey, you're on your way. You're going to get through this. You can come back. You know, catastrophes come in all flavors. Sometimes they're personal, a devastating diagnosis, an accident, a financial setback, and sometimes they're big, so big they make the news. A terrorist attack, a mass shooting, we have too many of those today, a terrible act of war, and of course, natural disasters. I've learned a lot from my own trial by fire, and so I'm here today to share a few of those lessons with you. Think of them as just a little peek from a fellow traveler who's just a few miles farther down this road we're traveling together. Just a little peek into the future and what's possible. You know, I've learned it's possible to find fortune in the midst of misfortune. It is. It's even possible to transform suffering into blessings in your own life and in the lives of others. And in fact, one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Richard Gore, says, we must transform our suffering because if we don't, we'll transmit it. So I want to talk with you today about this road back from disaster and how it can stretch all the way from survival to significance. And I want to tell you my story. Here's how I learned these lessons. About 13 years ago now, my husband and I got kind of tired of living in the suburbs. We were really ready for a change. Our daughters were almost finished with college. We didn't really need to stay in a particular school district anymore, and we were a little tired of living in the city. So we found this beautiful house in a stunning canyon about 30 miles east of San Diego, a canyon called Wildcat Canyon. And it was perched on the side of a mountain with a spectacular view all the way to Mexico. And yes, I know how that sounds, but on a clear day, I truly can see Mexico from my house. Well, we loved it from the start. This is our front yard, and so we had this amazing view. We had wildlife outside of our door, roadrunners and rabbits and coyotes and hawks in the sky, and every now and then a rattlesnake on the front porch. You know about those. We even saw a bobcat once. A real wildcat in Wildcat Canyon. What an amazing place to live. We loved it so much that we decided it deserved a name. And so we named our new home Terra Nova, which means our new land. Thank you. Okay. Where was I? Terra Nova, the new land. All right. So there it is. There's Terra Nova. And just 7 months after we moved to Terra Nova,
Okay, I can solve it.
we'll try that. Don't touch it. Just 7 months after we moved to Wildcat Canyon, Bob and I woke up to the sight of fire outside our window. Flames cutting a big swath across the mountain on the other side of the canyon, and a glow deep in the bottom of the canyon that told us flames were leaping uphill toward us. So we had no time. We just grabbed our animals, 2 big shaggy black Newfoundland dogs and a little cockatiel named Chelsea. And I scooped a few pictures off the dressers and threw them into a plastic laundry basket, and we headed out. We jumped into the first car that we came to, which happened to be my little tiny white Acura coupe. And as we backed out of the driveway into a swirl of embers, ashes blowing in a Santa Ana wind, we could see that the fire had arrived at our house. It was already wrapping around our beautiful Terra Nova. There was only one way out, and it was a steep, narrow road cut into the side of the mountain. At first the night was clear, and I thought, this is going to be a piece of cake I can just drive out. But as we came to the steepest part of that road, we hit the smoke. Now some of you have been through this now, and you know that the smoke was dense, it was dark, it was impenetrable. It was like looking out of a plane window at night into a thunderhead. And I couldn't see anything. And I screamed to my husband, I can't see the road. And he screamed back, you're just going to have to remember where it is. But I can't see it. I can't see anything. And he said, well, just don't wreck the car. You see why I need my hands. And what he meant was, don't drive off the edge of the mountain. He didn't care about my car. And just at that moment, when we're lost in the smoke, with our lives on the line, a bobcat jumped out of the brush right into my headlights. And he kind of wobbled a bit and then righted himself and dashed off into the smoke. And something in me knew that that wildcat was on the road. And something in me knew to follow it. So I followed the cat into the smoke, and when I got to the place where he had disappeared, I could see these two blurry fields of red below me. And I realized, oh my God, everything ahead of us is on fire. But there was no going back. We just had to keep moving. We had to get through. That was all. So in between these red fields of fire was a dark place that I knew had to be the road. And I steered for the dark place. And that is how we crept down the mountain and found our way to safety, escaping the Cedar fire. We burst through a final curtain of flame into clear night. And we were safe. The Cedar fire is still, to this day, the biggest known wildfire recorded in California history. A quick summary. The Cedar fire was started by a lost hunter who ran out of water on a very hot day and did what he'd been taught to do in hunter safety class as a last resort. He lit a signal fire. But he lit it in an inaccessible area of the Cleveland National Forest under red flag conditions after 4 years of drought with Santa Ana winds on the way. He lit it at the end of the day, less than half an hour before sunset, when air attack firefighters cannot fly. So they couldn't get to this fire to put it out right away, and it simmered for a few hours until right about the stroke of midnight, when the Santa Ana winds came in full force, and the Cedar fire exploded out of the wilderness and burned 100,000 acres overnight. Destroying in all more than 2,200 homes, killing 15 people, including one firefighter. And there was a second fire burning at the same time that took another 224 homes and 2 more lives. So this was our 2003 week of fire. Now, other fires in other states and in other times in history have gotten to be much bigger, even eclipsing the Cedar fire by hundreds of thousands of acres. They've killed more people, they've taken more structures. But the Cedar fire, after all this time, remains important because it's now documented as one of a first vanguard, I've forgotten my pictures here, there it is, of a new breed of wildfires that some people are calling the mega fires. Now, these are fires that are burning hotter, faster than anything we've known before, with a different level of intensity. These are fires that are burning faster than fire trucks can drive. They are erasing entire towns. They are changing the face of the earth as we've known it. But this is our new reality. We live in wildfire country, on a planet that's shaped by fire, a planet that's molten at its core, and in a time of shifting climate conditions and uncommon danger. So we must do what every organism and every ecosystem must do to survive. We must learn to adapt, and we must be resilient. You know, I recently have spoken to 2 or 3 groups of emergency professionals. These are the people who plan for and respond to our emergencies, and they're on this. They know what they're up against. They're really taking extreme steps to meet extreme situations. And we, of course, need to do our part too. And I think for the public, this means we need to know 3 things. We need to know how to be prepared. We need to know how to respond during a disaster. And we need to know how to be resilient, how to come back. Now, you all have already learned more than you ever wanted to know about the first 2 of those. So let's just talk about the 3rd thing. Let's talk about coming back from a disaster. You know, it can happen so fast, can't it? I mean, one day I was living in my beautiful new home, and the next day I'm homeless. And people are calling me a fire victim. See, that was all there was left. It looks familiar, doesn't it? So I didn't get it. I mean, Bob and I were alive. We'd driven down a mountain through fire. Our 2 dogs and our brainless cockatiel, we all escaped physically unscathed from this fire. Unlike 12 of our neighbors who didn't make it out. They were among the 17 people we lost that week. This is the car one of them was driving. As one of our other neighbors put it, we buried the victims, and the rest of us are survivors. But not everyone affected by the fire felt the same way. I saw some people who were embracing this victim label, and I'm not talking here just about semantics. I'm talking about the mentality behind it. So I saw people who were proud to be victims. They introduced themselves at public gatherings as fire victims. They were angry. Of course they were angry. We were all angry at first. I was angry. But these people seemed determined to hang on to that anger. They wanted to hang on to the bitterness, which was making them miserable. And they were eager to blame someone else for their pain. Now, a lot of this is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. But the fascinating thing about it was that it did not seem to matter how much or how little they'd lost in the fire. Let me tell you an example. In researching my book, The Fire Outside My Window, I talked to probably 150 people, including 2 families who had each lost 3 loved ones in the fire. And they were not the bitter ones. They said, oh no, our loved ones wouldn't want us to be bitter. They would want us to be happy and go on with our lives. And one woman who had lost her home and her 16-year-old daughter said, you know, the fire took so much. We're not going to let it have anymore. We're not going to let it have our joy. We're not going to let it have our future. So these people had lost the most, but they were not the bitter ones. The most bitter people I met had each lost their detached garage. Their families, their homes, their animals, all safe. And this is when I realized we get to choose. Now, I'm not saying we always have a choice in what happens to us. Clearly not. But we always get to choose our response. You can be a victim, or you can be a survivor. That much is up to you. And it doesn't matter how terrible your circumstances. You still get to choose. Now, I wasn't the first to learn this lesson. Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl learned this one thing, the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose one's own attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Now, obviously, my experience can't begin to compare with Viktor Frankl's, and yet I resonated so deeply with this quote, I began to wonder if maybe the steps in coming back from adversity and disaster are the same, no matter what the original circumstance. And I did some research and I found out that's true. There are psychologists and academics who have devoted their lives to studying this phenomenon. You can see their findings, you can read about them under the topic of resilience. And there's even a subset of the resilience literature called post-traumatic growth syndrome. Did you know that? Isn't that fascinating? Post-traumatic growth syndrome. So this means that there are some people who are naturally more resilient than others. And it also means that some people can use a challenge as fuel to accomplish great things. But what's even more fascinating to me is that resilience is a skill. It can be taught and it can be learned. There are proven steps that almost anyone can use to overcome almost any sort of disaster. So I read the literature and I boiled them down to 5 steps that I call the comeback formula. These are 5 simple but profound steps that apply to all kinds of situations. I find myself using this all the time now. So I hope you'll find these steps helpful too, wherever you are in your fire journey, and I'll bet that you're already applying a lot of them. Don't you love this photo? My husband, the photographer, took this photo of Mama Bird rebuilding her nest in the canyon, perched on a fern shrub. So here are Bob and I, here we are 3 years after the fire. That is our new Terra Nova. Terra Nova Nova, you might say. Clearly in its unlandscaped state, although, you know, the gophers had done such a number on the things we did plant, it kind of looks the same now. But we did rebuild, and we think the new Terra Nova is even more beautiful than before. By the way, I want to talk for just a second about this decision to rebuild. For us, it was a no-brainer. We had just found our new home 7 months before, and to us, it did feel like home after a long time of living in the suburbs that didn't. And we really couldn't imagine at that point in our lives wanting to live anywhere else. So for us, it was an easy decision. For others, it wasn't. There were many more factors involved. Another advantage that we had is that we had the insurance so that we were able to rebuild. But some people criticized us for going back. They thought we should have learned our lesson. I just want to say that whether or not you rebuild is a very personal decision, and whatever you decide, you do not have to explain it to anyone. It's your decision. Either way, you'll want to know these steps of the comeback formula, so let's take a look at them one by one. So the first one is come to a place of gratitude. Now there are tons of studies on this, tons, that show what a positive effect gratitude has. Gratitude actually makes us happier. If you can even think of one thing to be grateful for, it will raise you up out of this quicksand of anger and bitterness and resentment and blaming. And that quicksand is what can hold you down and keep you from healing and growing and moving forward. So gratitude is so important. that's a place to start, isn't it? Isn't that a good place to start? So the second step of the comeback formula is to believe you can come back. Now, sometimes when you're standing there looking at a big ash heap that used to be your home and all your possessions, it's a little hard to believe that. But we live in a resilient universe. Resilience is in our DNA. Every winter turns into spring. Even in the Arctic, even in Boston. I was driving up here yesterday, just loving all the greenery. You know, even in the fire zones, green is the new black, people. It's coming back. It may not happen as fast as we want it to happen, but Mother Nature knows what she's doing. Look at the examples of other people you know who have come back from overwhelming adversity and odds, and look in your own life at what you've overcome personally. That should help you believe that it's possible to come back. You know what? Maybe I should just take off my shoes. All right. I'm getting lower and shorter. I just broke it. We tried it. All right. The third step in the comeback formula is to accept help. Ask for it when you need it. Now, this is a tough one. You know what happened, right? After the fire, people rush in. They want to help. Strangers rush in. They want to help you. They see this as an opportunity to clean out their garages, dump it all on you. Sometimes they say, just get it back when you're done with it. Well, how are you supposed to know what of all this new stuff in your house you've never seen before came from them? I'm going to tell you this funny little story about a friend of mine in Washington, D.C. I used to work with him, and he heard about our fire, and he was devastated for us. And he said, Sandra, I'm going to get together some of my wife's clothes and send them to you. And I don't want you to think that I'm sending you junk. This is really her professional wardrobe that she's just not wearing anymore, and it's all designer stuff. So he talks about this, and he talks about this, and finally, this big box, like this big, arrives. Huge box, filled with designer clothes from the 80s. I mean, there was even a purple velour pantsuit in there with shoulder pads. Come on. So I didn't really want all of this help, and I was the kind of person who liked to think of myself as a giver, not a taker, and I didn't want to be anybody's charity case, but I really needed help. And finally, one of my friends, who also happens to be a psychologist, pulled me aside and said, Sandra, your job right now is to be a grateful recipient. That's your job. If you want to help other people, let them help you. Sounds very Jerry Maguire, but it's true. Because when there's a disaster, we want to help, right? And it makes us feel better to be able to help. So when somebody brings you that ugly old lamp that, belonged to their mother-in-law and they're just glad to get rid of it, just say thank you, take it, turn it immediately over to Goodwill. Be a grateful recipient. You know who else this is really tough for is our emergency professionals. I was privileged to talk to dozens of firefighters and law enforcement officers after the fire. They shared their stories with me, And almost every one of them got to a point where they had to pause and collect themselves because they were traumatized by the fire too. You know, we think of our emergency responders as superheroes, but they're people just like us. If anything, they have bigger hearts than the average person, and they're traumatized, and they were bothered that they could not stop an unstoppable fire. They were haunted that so many houses burned and people died on their watch. And yet they're macho. They're not supposed to need help, right? They're supposed to be the heroes who save everyone else. It's hard for them to accept help. But the research shows and experience shows that those who are most successful in coming back from trauma accept help and even ask for it when they need it. And I want to tell you one other little thing that Bob and I did, and I do not know anyone else who did this, but I think this helped us be resilient, and that is we went and we got professional psychiatric counseling. We had a little Ambien to help us get through the first few nights. We went in every week for a few months, and this counselor helped us to understand our emotions and said, yes, this is normal, yes, this is normal. Until finally he said, you guys are okay, get out of here. So don't let there be any stigma about getting the kind of help that you need right now. Okay, the next step, choose your response. Now, this is Viktor Frankl's big lesson to us. We can be victims or we can be survivors. Some people don't know this, so you need to tell them. You need to tell them they have a choice. Now, technically, yes, there's a level of being a victim here. But I'm talking again about our mindset. How do we feel about ourselves? And some people just don't know that they can choose to look at themselves as victims. So be watching for people in your community who may not realize this, who are seeing themselves as victims, who are seeing themselves with no control and no future. These people are at risk. We did see suicides after the fire, so take care of each other. And finally, maybe the hardest is kiss the past goodbye. It's not coming back. It's not, no matter how much we wish it would. But it is possible to build a new future, a new normal that, in many ways, is richer than what we knew before. It's hard to believe that at this point in your journey, but I've seen it over and over and over, and in my life, for sure. Part of kissing yesterday goodbye is letting go of that anger and blame, the quicksand that can hold us back, and it means forgiving. Now, in our case, we had someone to pin the fire on. We had poor Sergio Martinez, the lost hunter, and people were really angry at him. People thought he should be thrown into jail forever. I had a chance to meet Sergio because I was doing research for my book, and I was attending his court proceedings, and he finally did a plea bargain. And the day that happened, when the court proceedings were over, everybody streamed out, and all the media was clustered around Sergio's lawyer. And here goes Sergio all by himself. Goes to a window and just stands there and looks out, just stares out blankly. And he looks so lost and so broken that I just couldn't help but thinking, wow, somebody really needs to throw this guy a life ring before he drowns. And then my next thought was, well, I'm in a place to do that. So I went over and stood next to Sergio, and he's looking out the window, he's not looking at me, and I said, hi, My name is Sandra. I lost my house in the fire, and I just wanted you to know that I forgive you. And he didn't look at me, he just said, thank you. And later on at another of his many court proceedings, I saw him again, and he looked at me and he remembered me, and he said, I'm sorry about your house. And I said, thank you. And that was it. Sergio and I are good. Now, I don't know if forgiving Sergio helped him at all, if my forgiving him. But I know it helped me. Helped me. So the comeback formula tells us how to evolve from victim to survivor. And you know, it's great to be a survivor when the world is on fire all around you, isn't it? And it's great to be a survivor when the ship is going down, when all the odds are flat out against you. But we don't want to stay there. We don't want to just float around on our life ring forever. We don't want to camp on the ash heap that used to be our home. We want to reboot and rebuild. We want to recover our lives. We want to thrive. There's more to life, and we know it. Something tells us it's possible to come back even stronger than before, and that's because it is. It is possible. You see, the comeback formula is only the first step of a longer journey that leads from survival to what I call significance. Many of us respond to adversity by evolving from victims to survivors to thrivers. We discover life can be richer than we knew, than we imagined, in spite of the disaster, and maybe because of it. We become bigger people. You know, something very beautiful happens, says Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson. She's a spiritual teacher. She says something very beautiful happens to people when their world has fallen apart. A humility, a nobility, a higher intelligence emerges at just the point when our knees hit the floor. So we can thrive. But some of us don't stop there either. Some of us feel so fortunate to have come so far. We've learned so much from our struggle, and we just have so much empathy for others in the same situation, and we just can't keep that to ourselves. We want to share it. We start to share it in all kinds of ways. Teaching, helping, serving. And these are the people I call givers. These are the people who have taken another step in their journey. Now, here are a few ways I saw people giving after our fire. I know you can fill in a long, long list of your own. My good friends Dave and Kathy Castle, whom I did not know before the fire, ran a rebuilding support group for 3-4 years afterwards. And then, by the way, San Diego had a complete deja vu experience in 2007, another catastrophic series of fires, thousands more homes burned, and Dave and Kathy helped that group of survivors start their own rebuilding groups. My neighbor Ingrid across the canyon had kind of a 21st century hippie commune. You guys don't have that here, do you? I think you did. But anyway, Ingrid decided she would rebuild this place called Blue Sky Ranch with sustainable building approaches, and she made it a model, and now they have tours to show other people how to do this. Another woman helped people with their insurance. And then a lot of people joined CERT teams and community groups. And of course, I spent 10 years of my life documenting the whole thing. It's a form of alchemy, really. When you can take something terrible that happened to you and turn it into a blessing for others. Thank God for these givers that make the world go round. And you know, it's a lovely way to live. You don't really need to take any further steps on this journey. But a few people do. A few people feel called to leverage their legacy to the world. These are the people that we know have been through terrible adversity and yet have become lighthouses for all the rest of us. These are the people who answer that call. They pour themselves into changing things that need to be changed, changing people, changing lives, changing the world, changing the course of history. They go big and leave a legacy. And I call these people the changers. They start businesses, nonprofits, global movements. These are people, not just world famous individuals, but everyday people. Let me tell you about one named Rena. Rena lost her son, Eric, at the age of 15 to a very sudden, unexpected cardiac event. She was a nurse. She was devastated by this, and she and her husband wanted to do something to help others. So now she leads the Eric Paredes Save a Life Foundation. She and her team go out and screen high school kids for the kinds of undiagnosed cardiac abnormalities that killed her son, Eric. Rena has taken her tragedy and transformed it into a blessing for her life, because now she feels a sense of purpose, a way to honor her son's memory. And it's a blessing to others. She estimates that they found about 200 people so far, 200 kids out of the 20,000 they've screened who had serious issues that now have been addressed. She saved 200 lives. Rena's a changer. And by the way, I want to use her example to encourage you to share your fire stories with people. As you come back, you will become an inspiration to others. And I want to confess to you that I didn't share this comeback formula for a long time because I thought my story wasn't tragic enough. I thought about people like Rena who lost a child, and I thought, but I just lost my stuff. Who am I to get up on a stage and tell people how to come back from disaster? But it was Rena who heard me share this for the first time I got the courage to. And it was Rena, out of an audience of 600 people, who sought me out and said, I loved your story. Your story, it's like you were telling my story. And I thought, okay, I get it. Don't hide behind any false story that you're not enough. You are enough. You've been through enough. You can transform your suffering into a blessing for the world. Never doubt that you can come back from adversity even stronger than before. You can transform your toughest challenges into enduring strengths, and you can even change the world while you're at it. Victim or survivor? Survival or significance? You get to choose. Thank you, Lake County. God bless you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for sharing your story.